For our drawing of a creature that is inspired by the book Where the Wild Things Are, we're going to start by doing some drawing. You may look at the wild things from the presentation or from the book. You could also invent your own. I'm using some large paper. You can use any size paper that you have at home. And I'm going to create first just a drawing, a line drawing with a crayon. And I'm only using one color. I like to look at the wild things from the book, Where the Wild Things Are, and I like to draw first starting with the general shapes and then going back and adding more detail. And I'm looking at a picture where the wild things are begging Max to stay, not to go. So I'm just sketching lightly, making sure that I'm drawing big and filling the space, and drawing the wild thing that is reaching out, begging Max not to go, making sure that I have the claws on the feet, and drawing big and filling the paper. Now that I have a general sketch, I'm going to go back and add some details. Here's the line drawing of the wild thing. When we're looking at textures, I want us to notice that there's different ways to make texture. One way to make texture, like a wavy texture that I would like for the wild thing's hair, could be to draw that texture. So I could use wavy lines to show the wavy texture of this wild thing's hair. So I'm using a different color, and I am adding wavy lines to show that wavy texture of the hair. After I draw this texture, then I'm going to gently color over, and I like to use the edge of this crayon, the side. And I'm going to carefully add some color, so I don't cover up the wavy texture, but instead just fill in that shape. Next, we're going to look at how to find textures to do a texture rubbing to add more texture to our wild thing drawings. So let's go find some textures. One way that we can create texture in our work is to do a texture rubbing. So I've found a texture like this kind of bumpy wall in the classroom, and I'm going to use a crayon, and I'm going to use the edge of the crayon. I'm going to put my drawing on the wall, and I'm going to use that side of the crayon to add texture. Again, I want to rub lightly, and I want to try to stay here on my wild thing. And I'm going to make the wild thing's fur have this bumpy texture. And we can see how the bumps from the wall are now being rubbed onto the wild thing. You can find bumpy textures probably somewhere in the house, or maybe even outside, on the outside of the house. Tree bark would probably make a really interesting texture. And now we see that it doesn't take long to get a texture on our drawing. I'm going to find another texture for the background. So let's go find one. Here's the grate for the heating and air conditioning. I'm going to use this as another texture. I'm going to turn my paper because I would like for this texture, these lines, to be going vertically up and down in my drawing, so I'm going to turn them this way. I also have another color of crayon, and I'm going to rub this texture using, again, the side of the crayon, and I'm pushing down lightly, and we can see these lines being transferred onto the drawing. Now we have this texture on our drawing. We're going to go back to the table and finish up with crayons. Now that I have the textures that I drew, that I used the rubbings, I'm going to finish the drawing. So I'm going to add color. I don't want to color over my textures, so I want to be really careful when I get to the fur and the background that I keep those textures. I hope that you enjoy your drawing of the wild thing. Do your best, and I look forward to seeing your textures and your finished work.